Welcome to Health 2660. Here, we don't just talk about health, we tell the stories that heal. Now please listen to the story. Margaret stared at the reflection in the antique mirror, its silvered surface clouded with age, much like her own perception of herself. 73 years. 73 years, etched onto her face in fine lines that spoke of laughter, worry, and the quiet acceptance of time's relentless march. But lately, the worry lines seemed to deepen faster, outstripping the laughter lines. The joy had been slowly leaching away, replaced by a gnawing feeling of inadequacy, a frustrating sense of physical decline that seemed, according to her doctors, inevitable. It's just age-related muscle loss. Margaret, Dr. Albright had said, his voice kind but firm. Sarcopenia happens to everyone eventually. We can prescribe some physical therapy, but honestly, at your age, it's more about managing the decline than reversing it. The words hung in the air, like a death sentence, a pre-written obituary for her active life. Manage the decline, as if she were a leaky faucet slowly dripping away into oblivion. She tried the physical therapy, dutifully performing the exercises prescribed by a cheerful young therapist named Kevin. He was encouraging, but Margaret couldn't shake the feeling that she was simply going through the motions, a performance for an audience of one, herself. The exercises were difficult, bordering on painful. Lifting the small weights felt like trying to hoist boulders. Rising from her favorite armchair became an ordeal, a slow, creaking ascent that left her breathless and frustrated. Her world was shrinking. Once a vibrant and engaged member of her community, a beloved elementary school teacher who had nurtured generations of young minds, Margaret now found herself increasingly isolated. The simple act of grocery shopping had become a monumental task. The bags felt heavier, the walk from the car longer, the effort almost unbearable. She started ordering groceries online, sacrificing the pleasure of browsing the colorful produce and chatting with the friendly cashier. She missed her garden. Once a riot of color and fragrance, her garden now lay, neglected, a testament to her failing strength. She longed to feel the cool earth between her fingers, to coax life from the seeds, to watch the flowers bloom. But the thought of bending, kneeling, weeding, it was all too much. Even her beloved books seemed to offer less solace. The weight of them in her hands felt burdensome, the words blurring before her tired eyes. She dozed off more often than she read the stories, fading into half-remembered dreams. She felt invisible. People seemed to look right through her, their eyes sliding past as if she were a ghost, a faded echo of her former self. Children, once so eager to greet her with a hug and a story, now seemed wary, sensing her fragility. Her nights were restless, filled with fitful sleep and nagging aches. She woke up tired, stiff, and discouraged, facing another day of managed decline. She started to believe the doctors. This was it. This was aging. This was the inevitable slide into oblivion. Then, one Tuesday afternoon, a flyer caught her eye. Pinned to the community bulletin board at the local library, it advertised a workshop entitled Unlocking Your Vitality, a Holistic Approach to Aging. Skeptical, but desperate for any glimmer of hope, Margaret decided to attend. The workshop was held in a small, brightly lit room at the community center. About a dozen people were gathered, mostly seniors like herself, their faces etched with similar expressions of weariness and resignation. The presenter, a woman named Sarah, was younger perhaps, in her late 30s, with a radiant smile and an infectious enthusiasm. Sarah spoke about the importance of nutrition exercise and mindfulness in maintaining vitality as we age. She talked about the role of inflammation in chronic disease and the power of plant-based foods to reduce it. Margaret listened politely, but her hope began to dwindle. It was the same old story. Eat your vegetables, get some exercise. She'd heard it all before. Then Sarah mentioned something that caught her attention. She spoke about the importance of cellular health and the role of a nutrient called CoQ10 in energy production. CoQ10 is like the spark plug in your cells, Sarah explained. It's essential for converting food into energy. As we age, our CoQ10 levels naturally decline, leading to fatigue, muscle weakness, and other age-related issues. But then came the real surprise. Sarah went on to explain that not all CoQ10 is created equal. The synthetic forms commonly found in supplements are not as readily absorbed or utilized by the body. She talked about a natural form of CoQ10 found abundantly in grass-fed animal heart tissue, used for centuries in traditional cultures for its revitalizing properties. Think of it as feeding the fire within. Sarah said, her eyes gleaming with passion. You're giving your cells the fuel they need to function optimally. She held up a small bottle of organ supplements, explaining that they were sourced from grass-fed, pasture-raised animals and carefully processed to preserve their nutritional value. Margaret was intrigued. She had never heard of such a thing. Organ supplements. It sounded primitive. But the idea of feeding her cells, of reigniting her internal fire, resonated deeply within her. The image of a dying ember flickering back to life filled her with a sense of possibility. After the workshop, Margaret approached Sarah and asked her more about the organ supplements. Sarah patiently answered all her questions, explaining the science behind them, and sharing testimonials from other seniors who had experienced remarkable improvements in their energy levels and overall well-being. Margaret was still hesitant. She had always been skeptical of alternative therapies, but the thought of continuing down the path of managed decline was unbearable. She decided to take a leap of faith. She ordered a small bottle of the organ supplements online, opting for a brand that Sarah had recommended. The supplements arrived a few days later. They were small, easy-to-swallow capsules. Margaret took one with her breakfast, a glass of orange juice, and a silent prayer. She didn't expect miracles. She just hoped for a little spark, a little flicker of renewed vitality. The first few days were uneventful. She felt no immediate change. She continued her physical therapy exercises, still struggling with the weights and the chair. She tried to remain optimistic, but the familiar feeling of disappointment began to creep in. Then, after about a week, she noticed something subtle. She seemed to be sleeping more soundly. The restless nights were becoming less frequent, and she woke up feeling slightly more refreshed. It could be a coincidence, she thought. But she couldn't deny the small glimmer of hope that began to flicker within her. 2 weeks later, the change was undeniable. She had more energy throughout the day. The fatigue that had been plaguing her for months seemed to be lifting. She still struggled with the exercises, but she felt a newfound determination, a sense that she was actually making progress. 6 weeks after starting the organ supplements, Margaret walked into the local grocery store. She grabbed a shopping cart and began to fill it with her usual items: fresh fruits, vegetables, whole grains. As she approached the checkout, she realized that her cart was much heavier than usual. She hesitated for a moment, wondering if she should ask for help. Then she took a deep breath grasped the handle of the cart, and began to unload the groceries onto the conveyor belt. To her surprise, she did it easily. She felt a surge of strength in her arms and legs. She felt alive. As she paid for her groceries and walked out of the store, pushing the heavy cart, Margaret felt a tear roll down her cheek. It wasn't a tear of sadness or frustration. It was a tear of joy, of relief, of gratitude. She had done it. She had lifted her own groceries again. From that day forward, Margaret's transformation accelerated. She continued to take the organ supplements diligently, following the recommended dosage. She increased the intensity of her physical therapy exercises, pushing herself harder each day. She started walking in the park, gradually increasing the distance and the pace. Within 3 months, Margaret was a different woman. She was walking, moving freely, and even hiking the trails she hadn't touched in decades. Her garden was once again a riot of color and fragrance, thanks to her tireless efforts. She was reading books again, devouring stories with a renewed passion. Margaret's journey became a quiet testament to what's possible when we start listening to our bodies and supporting them with the right tools. She didn't just regain strength. She regained confidence, independence, and joy in daily life. She continued taking the supplements, stayed active, and shared her experience with others in her community. Her story wasn't about perfection or turning back time. It was about making steady, intentional choices that helped her feel stronger, more energized, and more connected to life again. At 74, Margaret no longer feared aging. She saw it as a stage for learning and adapting, not decline. And it all started with a small decision to try something new and give her body what it truly needed. Health 2660. Thanks you for listening. We'll see you in the next video, and until then, be kind to yourself.